All right, everyone. Welcome, everyone, to Out to Lunch with the Cantors, the first of our, we don't know how long, of a series. My good friend and colleague, David Rosen from Holy Blossom Temple congregation here in Toronto, we were thinking, what could we do? Something fun for the entire community. And we came up with this new program where we invite friends and colleagues from all around North America, but who knows, maybe we'll have colleagues from overseas later on in our program and talk about what? Well, why are we doing this program? We're doing this program because we want to bring maybe a new perspective, a new view to you on the life of the cantor, on what's the cantor doing. We're not just necessarily the person who leads your services in the synagogue, who wears a tallis and mainly recognize us at Sobeys, from the back of our head. We're actually humans who love life, who love music, who have passion. We're passionate about things. We we have a life, and we would like to bring you that angle in a humorous way, hopefully in a friendly, informal way. And here we are, welcoming our very first guest on our series, Cantor Rosen. Take it over.
So I think the best way to introduce our first guest is to tell you how I met him. Um, and I was in a cafe in Jerusalem, which sounds out of the question at the moment, but it was late at night, and I was at my first year of cantorial school, and my wife Elise came in on the running into the cafe, and she goes, "There's this guy. He's in Toronto. He kind of knows you, or he's heard of you or whatever, and he's contemplating, debating between going to medical school and cantorial school, and he wants to talk to somebody that might give him some good advice." The truth is, I gave him terrible advice because he became a cantor as opposed to going to medical school. But that is the way that I was introduced to Cantor Mo Glasman. And we often say that we are truly brothers from another mother in many ways, and our friendship is very deep and we have a lot of similar paths that we've taken throughout our lives, which will hopefully become evident in our show today. But Cantor Mo Glasman currently serves as the senior cantor of Congregation Emmanuel in New York City, which is one of the largest, if not the largest, congregation in North America. And he is an incredible colleague, incredible talent, wonderful dad and husband, and so many things. And he has amazing Canadian roots as well, which will also become evident in our conversation today. And so, Mo, why don't we just start off, and you can say hello to everybody and tell everybody about, a little bit about your journey and maybe your decision to become a cantor over a doctor or something like that.
First of all, thank you, David. Thank you, Tibor, and my wonderful colleagues who I've had the opportunity to sing with and spend some time with. Had I known the introduction would be that flattering, I would have had my parents watch. I really was not expecting that, so thank you. Look, my story is sort of unique because my family's story is unique. I was born in Johannesburg to Lithuanian immigrants via Israel. That's not complicated enough. Let me paint the picture. My parents were refuseniks post-Holocaust. They moved to Israel. My father volunteered in the Yom Kippur War. And then because of their musical legacy, we moved to South Africa. The Johannesburg Symphony needed a concertmaster, and at the ripe age of 26, my father took the job. So music was always a deep part of my family. My mother is a pianist and she teaches, and I'm delighted to report that they both live about 5 doors down from me on the same street in White Plains. They raised my sister and I, who is not a musician, though she's very musical. In a family of 3 musicians, there's only one profession, which could be the 4th. Does anyone want to guess? You can unmute yourself if you like. 3 musicians. What could the 4th person possibly be? I'll help you. She's a psychiatrist. So my sister is a very gifted geriatric psychiatrist and an awesome person. She sort of paved the way to sciences. We were both raised in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and we attended Beth Israel Synagogue, which is an Orthodox synagogue in Halifax. And she had a proclivity towards science, and as did I. And also in a family where your parents are musicians, God forbid you should become a musician. Even if, presuming you know how to add 2 numbers, then you must be a genius for science, and therefore it's a direct road to medical school. In all seriousness, I really did love science. And so I pursued a degree in anatomy and cell biology at McGill. But while I did that, I spent a lot of time singing in the music department. So participating in their choir, and then doing some Broadway shows with them, and then some light opera. And one day I was, as I was studying my anatomy, I remember I was finishing up with the cadaver that I was honored and blessed to work on. And it's been a very long day of learning cranial nerves and such, and I was quite tired. And I started to sing to the cadaver, and then I thought I heard it sing back to me, and I said, "Oh, I better go home now. It's been a long day." So that was my cue to go home. And on my way home, I ran into a friend who told me that he was auditioning for the show called Chorus Line. Do you guys know Chorus Line? If you do, give me a thumbs up. Right.
A chorus line.
You hate it? Is that what you said?
No, I said a chorus line.
Oh, a chorus line. Yes.
I remembered Hamlish. Yes, he wrote it. Yes, and I remember he published it as a chorus line because apparently in the musical guide of New York, every show was listed alphabetically. So with a chorus line, it always came to the top. Anyway, sorry
That's
to
right.
interrupt.
No, that's good. So I said, well, I'm not much of a dancer, but I have seen the show, and it's really kind of interesting. And I'm looking for something that will distract me from my cadaveric studies. So this might be the perfect thing. And I went and I auditioned. And of course, the first thing they did was ask me to dance. And I did. And that was a so-so situation. And then they asked me to sing, and they said, well, that'll work. And they said, we have to be honest with you. We really want you in our cast. You're perfect for a particular role. And the only problem is you're clearly not a trained dancer, but we think you can move enough that will work with you. So great. Off I go, diligently learning all my combinations and singing great music with really interesting students at McGill. And I finished one show, and this sort of diminutive man comes up to me, and he introduces himself, and his opening line was this. He went like this: "Hello, I think you're Jewish." And I said, "Okay, that's interesting. Yes, confirmed, I'm Jewish." And he said, "My name is Stephen Glass, and I've got a choir here in Montreal, and I would love for you to come and audition. We just lost one of our singers." And I said, "Well, sure, I'd be delighted to come and give it a go." Well, this was Shar Shemaim Synagogue in Montreal. And of course, Stephen Glass is the brilliant composer and music director of that choir. And very quickly, that choir turned into my multi-generational fraternity. We had everyone from Vladimir, our 70-year-old basso, who was brilliant, great bass voice, to a couple of guys like me, and you maybe you know Jamie Ellman if you guys have seen Yid Life Crisis. Have you guys seen that on Facebook? 2 Jewish guys who speak in Yiddish and make a lot of jokes. Yes, Harvey's seen. Good. So it was a really interesting group of young men and older men, and the harmony singing was heavenly, and I absolutely fell in love. So there I was, sort of toggling between my studies, which were very intense and fulfilling, and singing at the synagogue, which was the highest level of a cappella harmony singing. And it sort of started to plant the seed in my mind that that might be something I could pursue, but there was just one problem. I had never yet studied voice, and I really never had a voice lesson. And I wasn't a very good singer. I was just okay, truly just okay. But I was a violinist, so I could read the music and I could sing the harmony lines, and I was musical enough. And this became literally my sanctuary, and I just totally fell in love. So then I decided, well, after school, I better take a year off and really sort this out. So I moved to Toronto, and I got a job at UJA Federation. And in my portfolio was the summer camping experience in Ontario, in addition to this newly developed program that just came out called Birthright. And I was asked to lead the first trip out of Canada together with this woman who is now my wife. And I loved that whole trip, and I loved her. And it became yet another catalyst to think about the cantorate. While I was doing this job, I had the chance to sing in Sudbury, Ontario, a little synagogue. For those of you who know Eric Moses, he actually grew up in that synagogue. And they hired me as their high holiday cantor. And I said, this is great. I'd actually love to. I've sung in the choir. And at the time I was singing at, David, help me. Where was Charles Heller?
Beth Emmett.
Beth Emmett, right. So singing at Beth Emmett part-time. I enjoyed being in the choir, and I had this opportunity. There was just one problem. I didn't really know the Nusach. I mean, I knew it from growing up, but it's very different when you're leading a service. So everyone said, you have to go see Benny Meisner, and that's exactly what I did. And I knocked on his door, and I sort of told him my dilemma, and I said, it's a pleasure to meet you, Cantor Meisner. I'm a big fan of your service leading and your singing. And this was in June. I said, I've been invited to be a high holiday cantor. And do you think you could help me learn the Nusach? He said, "Whoa, you want to be a cantor? What are you, crazy? Go be a doctor. Don't go do something else, but don't become a cantor. It's not for you." And I said, okay, well, okay, but I have this opportunity. He said, you can't possibly learn this in 3 months. I mean, you go to school for a year. It's not an option. How are you going to do it? If you learn this much by next week, we'll talk. So he gives me a big chunk of Nusach and the sheet music, and I spend the whole week learning it, and I come back. He goes, Mo, I still think you should be a doctor, but I will help you. And of course, Benny coached me through the high holiday experience, and I went to Sudbury, and I loved it. Are you guys bored? I feel like I'm talking for a long time. Everyone okay?
Oh, we're loving it.
David, are you bored?
Not at all. I could hear it.
Tell us more about Sudbury.
Well, I can actually. Sudbury was interesting because it was a very small shul. There was a shamus there who I think had 3 other jobs. And they didn't really have a full-time religious leader. So I brought my family, and I brought my sister, who was dating this strapping young doctor who is now her husband. And because there's so few people, like, we called him up for like 14 different honors. He did Hagba, he did Glila, he did the 3rd Aliyah. I tried to convince him to do Kol Nidre. That was a no-go, so I did it instead.
Yeah.
It was great. It was like the most organic prayer experience with everyone who had their values in exactly the right place. And what's so amazing about it for me is, now I'm at this huge fancy synagogue, and I have an enormous professional choir and a team of musicians and organists, and we literally produce the holidays. There is something about that intimate experience which I take with me every high holidays. 15, 20 people in a room davening. I mean, it was beautiful.
Well, that was sort of my question I was getting at, but also the wider community, and if you had much reaction with other people in the Sudbury community, and how well you were received.
I mean, they were really complimentary, but I'm not sure there were non-Jews there, but it was a magnificent experience for me and for my family. And I really had to sort of, I mean, I just enjoyed so much leading the community that it really gave me pause for thought. But I was still really working hard for medical school, writing the MCAT, volunteering at a lab where we were doing, really intricate experiments on animals for Lou Gehrig's disease. I mean, I did everything that one's supposed to do to get into medical school. And that was always the plan, because my thought was, well, if I like singing, I could be a doctor who sings or a doctor who leads prayer. I mean, there are ways that this can be worked around. But the way medical school works is, and I'm sure some of you know this, if not from your own experience, but from your relatives and friends, you hear from medical schools often at around late May, June. And cantorial school was starting in April. So I led a birthright trip and I stayed in Israel. And I said, you know what, I'll start cantorial school and then we'll see how it goes. I started cantorial school and I fell absolutely in love with it in Jerusalem. I loved my classmates. I loved all the different ways that we were asked to think and learn and engage with the world around us. I mean, I just thought it was the most fantastically engaging education. So I decided that would be the path I was going to follow. And, very interestingly, I received a phone call from the Dean of Admissions of Dalhousie Medical School. You may know that you have the best chance of getting into your province of residence, which at that time for me was Nova Scotia. And the dean said to me, Mr. Glasman, we had a really interesting time with your application because your grades are pretty good. They weren't amazing, but they were very good. You were in a tough program. Your MCAT scores also really good. Your extracurriculars were off the charts. We appreciate that. But in your interview, it seemed to us like your real passions were your music and your culture, maybe even your religion. Because when you spoke about those to our committee, you lit up in a way that you didn't when you were talking about medicine. So she said to me, we've never done this before, but what we would like to do is suggest that you take a year shadowing physicians, doing more research, making sure this is right for you, and we'll give you entrance to the following year. You have my word, next year. And I said, well, thank you very much. I want to become a cantor, and that was that.
It's really incredible story. And by the way, if all of us who went the path of studying with Cantor Meiser listened to him when he told us not to become cantors, none of us would well know. So it's important to know that. But Benny always supported us for sure. Let's pause for a moment of music. I think that is wonderful. Mo, I'm going to, with your permission, play something. It is a well-known song called "The Prayer," and it's in Hebrew and English. And it was an event where of course, you can explain it much better than I can, but that you were celebrating the marriage of actually, why don't you tell us exactly where it's from, and then I won't get it incorrect.
Sure. So my synagogue has a educational wing called the Stryker Center. And we are fortunate to bring in international politicians and artists and cultural icons. And we also are able to make sort of statements about our beliefs in Judaism. One of the challenges that some Israelis experience is there is no option for a secular wedding. If you want to be married in Israel, you are de facto required to be married by an Orthodox rabbi, which for many is perfectly fine, but for some, it's just not what's right for them. So we wanted to bring in couples from Israel to offer them our wedding and our wedding ceremony. We invited 6 rabbis to join us from various congregations in New York, and I was the cantor. And in so doing, we offered them a wedding that they wouldn't be able to receive in Israel. So one couple was just a secular Jewish couple that wanted a conservative or reform chuppah. The second couple was a gay couple who an Orthodox rabbi would never marry. And the third, there was one member of the couple that was initially from the former Soviet Union who couldn't prove his Judaism. And therefore, the Orthodox Rabbanut also said no. So we flew them to New York and we did their wedding. And this was the anthem to the exchange of rings.
And you're seeing with Shani Ben Or, who, just a word about her, became the first Israeli Reform ordained cantor, I think about a year ago. Now she's in rabbinical school. So this is a lovely duet that I will share with all of you now. Here.
David, I don't think we're hearing sound.
1 second. Are we not hearing sound?
I was hearing the sound.
Oh, maybe it's just me.
Okay, my apologies. Let's continue.
Are others not hearing sound?
That was beautiful.
Do we have a sound issue? I just want to make sure.
Yes, there was a sound issue. I looked at the chat,
Oh,
and
one
some
second.
people
All
could
right.
hear, some people couldn't hear. So I don't really understand why. Um,
Was it, sorry, what, did everyone hear the sound or no one heard the sound? Oh,
a lot of people didn't. I did hear the sound.
that is odd. Okay. Because I shared the way I usually share all my videos. So I will look into that. Let's continue on. I'll make sure and we'll replay that.
I
Because
can affirm that the song and the singing was
it was great.
absolutely
But let me fix it for our
magnificent.
next clip.
Thank you.
And all those who missed the sound, why don't you visit
I'll put the link to that
the link? That's right, in the
video in
chat.
the chat. Let me do that.
That would be great. And
It's
you
also
can
on YouTube and on my Facebook page if you want to find it there.
Beautiful, beautiful. Also, we would probably take a few questions in the end of the program. So if you have a good question, you want to put it in the chat box, we will be able to ask Cantor Glassman to respond to some of these. So please use the chat box. Also, you can send some nice messages to him if you'd like. Nothing bad, nothing nasty, only nice things. He's really a nice guy.
Although the nasty things would be interesting. I mean, it'd make for an interesting hour.
I know that's what we like. Not really. Well, can you talk about your hobbies? I understand you've got lots of hobbies, and
Yeah, sure. I mean, I really love sports. So I play a lot of tennis. I got to play. We are all muted. Chat does not appear, says Tom Yarman.
that's right. A chat should be there as well. Should be there in the bottom.
People have typed in the chat. The chat is working.
Yes, yeah. That's the chat box is working fine.
And Toby Brotman, I'm sorry, I saw your frustration. I also didn't have sound, but maybe we'll work through it. So my hobbies, yeah, I love sports. I play a lot of tennis. I play singles and doubles. I like to work out. I like to go to the gym. I like to run. And I'm sorry to say that I have picked up the game of golf. And that has been a big mistake. It is the only time in my life where I have challenged Pavlov, because you couldn't possibly be so bad at something and then have the natural inclination to want to do it again. Pavlov was wrong. But here I am, and I often try to get out there and play golf, and thank God I'm getting better. But it's a wonderful, wonderful game. And I'll just share, David and I have spoken about this before, but I think that, so first of all, you should know there's a book that talks about singing and golf and makes the connection between singing and golf. And one of the takeaways from this particular book is both singing, golf, tennis, they all require you to be in the moment in a way that sometimes other things can't. So when you are playing golf and you are swinging the club, you simply can't be anywhere else. You need to be focused on what you're doing. The same is true for singing. I mean, it's a transference of energy into a spontaneous act that is somewhat athletic. At some point, you just have to give in to being in the moment. And I love that. I love the thought of extending the present through golf, tennis, or singing. That's when I'm not being a dad, because that takes up much of my time, thankfully.
Mo, can you tell everyone a little bit about your family? And of course, I know your family very well, but for everyone here, your wonderful wife, Rachel, and your boys, Lev and Jonah, can you tell us a little bit about them?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, Rachel and I were paired to lead the first birthright trip from Toronto. She grew up at Beth Tzedek Congregation, And she and I fell in love leading this trip and made sort of the long distance year work while I was in Jerusalem. And then she moved in with me in New York. We lived together for 4 years. I was ordained, and then we got married in 2005. And we have two awesome boys, Lev and Jonah. Lev is 14 and Jonah is 12. They attend Camp George every summer, and God willing, they'll be there this summer as well. I shouldn't cross my fingers. I should like Magen David my fingers, but I don't know how to do that. And there's a great deal of Canadian pride in our family. All four of us are Canadian citizens, in addition to being American citizens. And my kids really relish in the Canadian isms that they pick up during their summers. And, it's our hope that maybe they'll go to university in Canada one day. I'm a lucky guy. I'm very, very blessed.
So, Mo, can you tell us a little bit about your job at Congregation Emmanuel, and maybe your musical vision, and without spending too much time, but just giving the people the idea, a little bit about the history of the music and worship at Temple Emmanuel, where it was when you got there, and where you see it going in the future.
Yeah, thanks for that. Happy to do that. So Temple Emmanuel is known to be a flagship synagogue of the Reform movement. We are, by square footage, the largest synagogue in the world. We have a membership of about 2,400 families, and we're blessed with amazing resources. Historically, Temple Emmanuel was the first Reform synagogue in New York City, and it has been sort of a holdout for classical Reform Judaism. So what do I mean by that? Prior to my arrival, most of the music that one would hear at Temple Emmanuel would come from Western Europe. Composers like Zulzer and Lewandowski and Naumburg, 19th and 20th century composers who really wrote in a classical milieu, writing for cantor, mixed choir, and organ. It's the most beautiful, elevated music, and its magnificence is just overwhelming. Now, Temple Emmanuel has hired me in part because they had a desire to sort of move their culture without losing what's so special about the institution. So on the one hand, you want to maintain that beautiful classical tradition, but on the other hand, if you can't engage the next generation to love that tradition, it's simply going to die. There's no lifeline if kids and teens and young adults aren't finding interest in this. So when I arrived, as I said, it was cantor, choir, organ. I play the guitar, and as you know, I play the violin. And in the last 5 years, very strategically and very slowly, and with buy-in and with some really difficult growing pains, we have moved the congregation such that if you would tune in on a Friday night now, you would still hear our magnificent professional choir. You would still hear the organ, but you would also hear violin, percussion, bass, piano, and I play the guitar. And the music is a kaleidoscope of different genres that we work very carefully to weave together. Now, the prayer experience is not just about music. Temple Emmanuel used the Union Prayer Book, and we still do for 3 festivals. But now we've written our own, and they're beautiful, moving offerings of prayer. So it's a contemporary hybrid service Once a month, we do a purely classical service to maintain that goodness. When we do our family services, it's our pedagogical responsibility to expose our children to some of the classical pieces. It's all very carefully thought through. We have a worship and ritual committee that support us and sometimes challenge us. And, to be perfectly honest, it hasn't been easy for some people. It's been really painful to see change and to experience and live this change. Um, People grow up with this certain milieu and want that to stay in perpetuity. And then others are really open to change because they know it's good for the congregation. We've come a long way. I'm very proud of that.
And Mo, knowing you've been through this before. One thing some of you may know, Mo and I were both fortunate at different times to serve Congregation Kolami in White Plains, New York, as their cantor. I succeeded Mo, and you made transformational change in worship at a time there, and went through that. Maybe you can say a word about that and just some of the how you handle transition and guide people along a path that they may not want to go along, and how you work on that.
Sure. So similarly, Kolami was a classical reform synagogue, though less so than Temple Emmanuel. They already had various contemporary services. I don't want to leave anyone with the wrong impression. This is all done with intimate partnership with our rabbis on staff, and a very, very strategic step 1, step 2, step 3, very strategic timeline. So I don't take the credit for this change. I was just someone on the team of change. At Kolami, we did it a little bit differently. We created 2 services, our 8 o'clock classical service, and then we introduced a 6 o'clock service, which was much more contemporary, much more participatory, and singable, and had a lighter feel. And very quickly, the attendance at the 8 o'clock service started to come down, and the attendance at the 6 o'clock service started to rise. And eventually, the 6 o'clock service became the main service. But that's over a timeline of 4 or 5 years. It didn't happen overnight. There are some who really missed the classical opportunities, and we created a once a month classical, we called it Explorations in Jewish Music, sort of a teach and performative moment in classical music in different genres and with different instruments, and that fulfilled the need. But the communal growth was extraordinary. And at a relatively medium-sized synagogue, we would often get 200 people at every Friday night service, and young people, and it enlivened the whole place. And then, of course, David took it from there and brought it to the next level.
I think I wanted you to say a word about, we know you're part of a musical group that continues to evolve and do different things. And we wanted to share a clip of that, which a quite humorous clip, but about what it is to be a cantor and some of the different things that go on in our weeks, what may happen, but during a given week. But can you say something about that group that you're a part of?
Yeah, sure thing. So I've always loved ensemble singing. I am, at my very nature, a collaborator, and I love to harmonize. Israel was turning 70 a few years ago, and I thought that given my proclivity to sort of cross denominational lines, this is a great opportunity to bring different movements of Judaism together. It just happened to be that in New York, we are blessed with a few very gifted cantorial tenor voices at large congregations. And when I looked at Park Avenue Synagogue, my friend Ozzy, and when I looked at Kilat Yeshurun, where Chaim David Berson is, I said, here we go. We have an Orthodox, conservative, and a Reform cantor in New York City serving major congregations. What would it mean to pull our communities together to come to Temple Emmanuel to do a concert for Israel. Well, it turned out it was more than a concert. We recorded an album and we started this group called One Voice because there are too many moments where we focus on the differences between the movements and not enough for the togetherness. And of course, music is the meeting place. And we did this concert and we wanted a humor feature, a parody, and this is what we came up with. It is composed, of course, by Leonard Bernstein, based on the song called Officer Crumpkin. You'll hear a few other songs. The parody is written by Cantor Jonathan Commissar.
We're going to have Tibor share it. If you cannot hear, please let us know. Hopefully this will work this time.
What does a cantor actually do?
Oi. Being a cantor, people sure expect a lot from you. This just in, an email I received from one of my congregants. Dear Cantor Chaim David Burson, my uncle died today. They're shipping his dead body to New Jersey from LA. Will you sing some Sinatra with the other Jewish stuff? New York, and my way. Do you think that that's enough? Hold on, Cantor Burson, can you sing some more? If I were a rich man at Toreador, my Yiddish Mame, and Old Man River too, and after Kaddish I'll be seeing you. Is it true?
Is it true?
Yes, it's true. Yes, it's true. After Kaddish I'll be seeing you.
Only in America.
One more thing, Cantor Schwartz, can we finish by noon? We're bringing guests to Central Park in a hot air balloon. I'm already quelling and I just shed a tear, cause this will be bar mitzvah of the year. Of the year, of the year, of the year, of the year, this will be bar mitzvah of the year. That's what I fear.
Would you officiate as cantor in a restaurant we adore? But the only date they have is Yom Kippur. Wait, Cantor Glassman, there's one more detail. The groom's a Baptist minister who spent time in jail. Would you consider, I know it's not the norm, but isn't it okay if you're reform?
You're reform, you're reform,
I'm reform,
he's reform, and anything goes if you're reform.
Whoa, whoa. In addition to the unpredictable requests and comments and interesting characters that we cantors encounter every day, one thing we know for sure, no one in the Jewish world holds back their opinion.
Everyone is an expert, and they have no problem telling you.
And in the words of Julie Andrews,
Shul is alive with the sound of nudness, with complaints that can last for 1,000 years. Our hearts will be stressed with the sound of nudness, and they'll fetch once more. Cantor, cantor,
Cantor,
can't you sing it lower? I'm struggling to sing.
can't you sing in English? I don't understand a thing.
Can you get rid of the organ? And I don't mean to be crass, but Cantor, this is not a Catholic mass. The life of a cantor, a surprise every day. The things that they expect of you,
Those things people say, yes, being a cantor's
more than singing Kol Nidrei. The life of a cantor is more like Oy vey.
What an amazing piece. I think we have to use this as our theme song, David, from now on.
It's a great theme song.
Oh, this was
Very poignant
absolutely
I-
fabulous.
I remember being at that concert. It was quite wonderful, and as you saw, full house. It was really really great
Wow.
night.
I hope
Thank
everyone
you.
could hear it this time. David, Mo, did you
Everyone
guys
heard
hear it?
okay this time? Good. All right.
Okay, excellent. I hope everyone else too. Wow.
Um, Mo, do you have a favorite piece or a piece of music or liturgy that really speaks to you, or something that you refer to often?
We were discussing this with David earlier. I'll let you think about it for a second.
Mhm.
Very often, we're thinking, like, we've discussed this at our, world famous Toronto Council of Chazanim. And as you know, David and I were past presidents. And one day, Mo, when you're going to move back to Toronto, you can be a president of this council as well. But
That sounds like a lovely invite.
Yeah.
I will tell you there is a piece that I always gravitate towards, in part because of where we are and what time it is, and that is the Hasidic Kaddish at the end of Ne'ilah, because at that point, we learn about dveikut, or dveikus, as you might know it, which is this like overwhelming sense of prayerfulness that can come upon you. I feel that at the end of Yom Kippur, after fasting and after getting through hours of prayer and liturgy, we reach this moment where it really feels as though we're levitating, and the gates of the Almighty are celebrating a new year for us. So that would be my choice.
Mm.
How about the composer that
That's tough. I mean, I love, like, it depends on the genre. I mean, I think Max Helfman wrote brilliantly for the tenor voice and really understood a snapshot of time. Of course, Lewandowski, Zulzer, gorgeous. I think Ganchoff wrote extraordinary Chazanisha music. I did my thesis and recital on Yossele Rosenblatt, a very well-known cantor from the Golden Age. His writing was extraordinary. And in modern music, there's Donny Massing, and there's Noah Aronson, and of course Debbie Friedman and Shlomo Carlebach. I mean, they all have their place in a service if used with taste and thoughtfulness.
Great.
well said.
I wanted if there's any questions, just because we're getting towards the end of the hour, we want to be sensitive to everyone's time. If there's any questions, maybe we'll just look to the chat and see if anyone has a question, or you can even unmute yourself if we do it gracefully, and you can ask a question live.
David, I see some people already have hands up.
Oh, great. Yes. Okay, let's look at that. Toby Brotman, if you'd like to ask a question.
Toby, you need to unmute yourself.
It was a wonderful concert, but I'm sorry I couldn't hear the first part. But the rest is wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm really enjoying it.
Thank you, Toby.
Thank you. I believe I saw Jack Kugelmass had his hand up, but now it's down. Jack, did you want to share something? You're muted. No? Okay. All right. He was muted. Great. Any other questions?
I see a question here from Linda Siegel. If you do any of Srul Irving Glick's music, as you know, Srul Irving Glick was the first music director of Bet Tikva for over 40 years, and he established the liturgy of the synagogue, really, the music of the synagogue, a phenomenal musical leader. So, do you do anything from Srul?
there are a few settings of Glicks that we use. I'm thinking of I think he actually wrote something for from Shira Shirim that I've used before, and I think he's written a few sort of cantorial duets that I've sung.
How about our Halifax connection? Do we have a half a minute for that?
Sure, go for it.
Yeah, so we have something very much in common. As many of you know, Isabella and I, we landed in Canada in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And actually, I think in my first or second year of being there, I was invited to a concert at the conservative synagogue at Shar Shalom, where Mo was performing with another cantor. I can't remember who was it. Maybe Lisa Pomerantz. Maybe, I'm not so sure.
No, it was Tracy Scher, who also, by the way, is from Nova Scotia.
Oh, she is also from Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
Okay. So I met Mo first there in 2001, approximately. We didn't really had a chance to talk. He was busy with a concert, but then just a few years ago we met back in Halifax, and Mo organized that concert, an anniversary, a special anniversary of the Orthodox Synagogue of Beth Israel. So tell us a little bit of your Halifax maybe experience and that concert that we did together. That was really amazing.
Sure. The community in Halifax is pretty tight knit. There is a conservative and an Orthodox synagogue. My parents happened to join the Orthodox synagogue, and I was the kid who loved going to religious school 3 times a week, or cheder as we called it. It was fascinating to me, in part because it like Camp Kadima, where I grew up in Nova Scotia, gave me a sense of belonging that I didn't necessarily feel in Irish, Scottish Halifax. I had international friends growing up, but I never quite felt like I fit in unless I was at Beth Israel Synagogue or at Camp Kadima. So I grew up there. I was very involved in their youth group, had my bar mitzvah there, of course. And when they celebrated, I think was it 120 years or some sort of significant anniversary, they called me and asked if I would participate in this concert with Tibor and another local cantor. And I said, yes, of course. And it was a lot of fun. We had a great time. We had a nice band. And of course, Tibor sounded beautiful, as he always does. And we got to do some really interesting crossover music, and the community loved it. Tibor, was this the concert where I invited Heidi to come up and sing?
Yes, exactly. That's what it was. And that was a really wonderful moment in the concert.
So just to offer background, at this same synagogue, I grew up with this woman. Her name was Heidi, and she had the most magnificent voice. And she and I would sing together. We went on the March of the Living together, and we recorded a song on the March of the Living album called We Rise Again, written by a Leon Dubinsky, a fine composer in Nova Scotia. Heidi had her bat mitzvah there. We've known each other since we were 6 years old. She happened to be in Halifax. And I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful for the local community to have Heidi come and sing We Rise Again together? It was challenging because it was the first time that a woman sang on that bima, and that was challenging for the rabbi, and that was challenging for maybe 1 or 2 members of the community. But I mean, it really was probably the most moving part of the concert. Standing ovation, not necessarily because the singing was so magnificent, even though I think it was pretty good, but really because, the community saw these 2 people who they raised as kids come up and, as adults, sing the song about what has now become a Holocaust memorial song. So that was an interesting dilemma that the rabbi had to deal with.
What a beautiful moment for the congregation.
Jack has a question.
Jack, go ahead.
And I'll pass on my question in favor of something else, if I may. I'm wondering if you could use your technical skills and go back to the song that we didn't hear, that Cantor Glassman sang at the weddings, the prayer, and play it from YouTube or play it from another source so we can hear it.
We fixed it. We fixed the issue. We put the link to it in the chat.
Okay.
So if anyone can just copy and paste it, because we have one more selection to share, and I want to make sure we wrap up the program just because of time.
Okay, so I'll quickly ask my question. Take 1 second then, Cantor.
Yeah.
So
sure.
Let me ask this to the members of Bet Tikva. So if a Cantor turned up, say, your Cantor won the lottery and, took off. And say, so you hired another Cantor, he shows up, he starts to daven in English. What would happen to that Cantor at Bet Tikva? Basically, I'm asking you, does God speak English is what I'm asking you.
Well, so I haven't discussed all the languages that God speaks, but I want to believe that God speaks the most important language, which is that of sincerity. Throughout our history, Hebrew has been our language, and there's no doubt about that. But Yiddish has also been our language, and Ladino has also been our language. And sure enough, Aramaic and English are also our languages. So to answer your question, and I know what you're getting at, I think that would be an unwise decision because that's not the culture of Bet Tikva. But for those who know how to respect a culture and to move cultures and educate cultures, there are ways of doing so where there could be moments that are in English.
Okay, good. No, I'm genuinely interested. Thank you for that.
Just following this question about singing in English, at that concert in Halifax, you remember the song you brought, that Nova Scotian song that you brought, and you wanted us to sing it together?
Oh, yeah.
And it was one of the most uncomfortable moments of my life, especially when I have to go up on the beam and sing something in English. I'm not great with English singing. And I said,
well,
"Oh my gosh!"
In fairness,
none of
us did sing in Hungarian. It was not fair.
That's right. No Hungarian that concert. You're right. No,
So we just our final question, and we'll end with a song. Is we know that the situation in Eretz Yisrael is tense at the moment, and maybe if you could just take a moment and say a word, and we're going to end, of course, with a duet that you and I sang together. That at the time, while it was made 6 months ago for my installation, we couldn't have known that this prayer really resonates with us today in thinking about peace being unreachable in many ways. So maybe you can just say something about that for a moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think throughout our history, and certainly this is true when you think about the state of Israel, it's the dreamers who have made change in the world, and it's the vision and dreams of the likes of Herzl and others who've been able to create a state of Israel that we love so dearly. But boy, would we love it more if it were peaceful. And boy, if we could find a way to give everything that everyone needs so that there could be some sort of coexistence in that country, we would all be better off. So based on the song Impossible Dream, which sadly sometimes it feels like that, and in our desire to make peace a possibility if it's only a dream, Cantor Rosen and I put together the following video.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל, to ride the unridable wrong, to love pure and chaste from afar, to try when the arms are too weary, to reach the unreachable star. Sim shalom tova uvracha, ein v'chesed v'rachamim. Fight for what's right without question or pause. To be willing to march into hell for heavenly cause. And I know if I'll only be true to this glorious quest, that my heart will lie peaceful and calm when I'm laid to my rest. בטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. To reach the unreachable, the unreachable, the unreachable star. And I always dream the impossible dream, and will finally reach the unreachable stars.
Just amazing, amazing. Beautiful, beautiful piece.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we are unfortunately out of time. I mean, we could talk all afternoon. We talk a lot. Mo and I talk a lot, so we can always talk. But we want to be respectful of everyone's time. I'll apologize again that the first video didn't go well. I've put it a couple times in the chat, so please refer to that YouTube so you can watch it in all of its glory. It's really wonderful. Tibby, do you want to say something about our next show coming up?
What's the date, David? Is it
June 20th, Thursday, June 20th.
Cantor Jackie Mendelson, the icon of conservative Chazanut, and not only conservative Chazanut today, will be our guest. Cantor Emeritus of Congregation
Temple Israel in
Israel in White Plains,
White
Plains, New York. Please mark it in your calendars. It'll be a really fun one. Not that this wasn't. Mo, you were phenomenal and very funny at times. I really liked those accents that you were doing. And the only one I missed, it was the Nova Scotian accent. But maybe one day we can get that too.
Oh, geez, Bart, I got no problem talking like I'm from the East Coast. Don't you worry yourself just 1 second. Don't get your keep all rattled up. It's just fine. All right, Bart?
But now that you're doing, I need one more because we need to laugh a little bit. It's been so serious. We need the Irish Ushray. That's what we need. All right. So
It's
you can
Scottish.
Scottish. Sorry, not Irish. Scottish. Pardon me.
Have you guys ever heard anyone daven in Scottish? It's because in this choir in Montreal, Ivor was there. He was Scottish, and Ivor prayed in Hebrew, and it sounded a wee bit like this: Ashrei Ashrei v'techo, od yalu chasela, Ashrei am shekach halu tilal David.
That's great.
I'll be davening in my kilt tomorrow.
Fantastic. Mo, thank you so much for being a part of our show and for gracing us with your wonderful stories and your wonderful talent. And the Jewish world is a better place because of you, as well as the world in general. So thank you for being with us. And we look forward to seeing everyone again soon.
Gentlemen, thank you. And thanks to everyone who joined this call. And thank you for supporting your cantors. Toronto is rich with great cantors. Two of the best are on this call. So gentlemen,
Wow.
Thank you very much. And I wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.